are looking for a new head coach, a new GM. What is next?
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Has been fired. Steve Keim will not return as GM of the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals 2.0 can now officially begin. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide, and they have a special offer for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. So it came as no surprise to some. It came as no surprise to many. It came as no surprise to most, I would assume. But multiple reports had Kliff Kingsbury removed from post this morning ahead of the time he was supposed to talk to the media at 2 o'clock local time today. There's a lot that's going to need to be discussed between now and a month from now, 2 months from now. The draft, free agency, OTAs, and the start of the 2023 NFL season. There's so much that needs to be discussed. So I'm going to take a small bite of it out today and talk about the tenure of Kliff Kingsbury as head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. I'll talk a little bit about Steve Keim, even though we kind of saw the writing on the wall with this, with his medical leave, as maybe, although you want him to get healthier with whatever he's dealing with, as a way to pass him off as no longer being the GM of the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm going to give my leaders in the clubhouse of who I think the next head coach and GM should be for the Arizona Cardinals. And no, Sean Payton is not the guy. So I said a lot over the tenure of Kliff Kingsbury that Kliff was able to put together a great movie trailer, but the movie wasn't always that good. Some great plays, some great highs, some great wins, but overall, movie wasn't great. You could pretty much say that from the start of 2019. The Detroit Lions game, week 1. The Cardinals go down, I think it was 3 scores at halftime. Kliff Kingsbury talked about thinking he could potentially get fired at halftime. And then, on the back of Kyler Murray, the Cardinals come back, go to overtime, and where Tremaine Brock dropped interception in Detroit Lions territory from getting an improbable win in Kyler Murray's first game as the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. And I see that as kind of a microcosm of the relationship between Kliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray throughout the extent of Kliff Kingsbury's head coachship. Kyler Murray was doing things that made Kliff Kingsbury look better of a coach than he was. And this is not, I do need to give this disclaimer once in a while. This is not a personal attack on Kliff Kingsbury, the human, at all. This is about the avatar that is the head coach. Kliff Kingsbury, by all accounts, is a very nice guy. Easy to get around. Obviously a player's coach. Players love him. He's the fun uncle. He's the PE teacher. And nothing against fun uncles or PE teachers. But they don't carry the amount of weight that a parent does. That a principal does. That an enforcer does. And from week 1 of the 2019 season, we saw what Kyler Murray was capable of when Kyler Murray was just able to play. And we've seen in 2021, technically, the Las Vegas Raiders game, what Kyler Murray was able to do when Kyler Murray was able to just play. Now, this is not absolving Kyler Murray or any of the players from not playing up to their potential to get more wins in the win column than they have. This is not all on Kliff Kingsbury. This is not all on Steve Keim. This was a collective effort in what has been a fractured, foundationed organization pretty much since its inception. And the growth necessary to shift, to pivot into a winning culture was a collective effort in which they all came up short. Now, you can have the moral victories. You can have the 7-0. You can have the 10-2. You can have the Hail Murray. You can have the Vegas game this year. But it's not enough. And it wasn't enough. And I will not take a victory lap with this because I think it's, I've said enough. I knew that the end was near week 1 of the 2021 NFL season. Tennessee. Going to Tennessee as an underdog. Tennessee was the 1 seed, I believe, in the playoffs the year before. This would be a great litmus test for the Cardinals. Coming in after starting 6-3 the year before with the Hail Murray, and they're starting to be buzz about Kyler Murray, and he was a Pro Bowler, this is the year. This is the year everything comes together. And what we saw in Tennessee, although they put up a 40-burger against Tennessee and won handily, false starts, ill-used timeouts, penalties, confusion, delay of games. Like, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And those things are seemingly cosmetic. Phil Jackson said something really important. I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing this, and I'm jumping to basketball here. Phil Jackson says, I practice hard during the week so I don't have to practice during the game. Or so I don't have to coach during the game. I coach hard in practice so I don't have to coach during the game. That's the idea. You're well prepared. You're going on the road. And I saw the same cosmetic issues that we saw when Kliff Kingsbury took over in 2019. And if those little things didn't change, how would the big things change? And that's what I struggled with. When the 7-0 glaze over the inherent structural issues that the team still had with Kliff Kingsbury as head coach, that's why I've been so vocal with this. I appreciate the wins. Look at what's happening. Look at what's happening. The same problems, the same issues, the same things over and over again. And it all came to a head this year when they weren't winning games and they still weren't doing the little things right. And this is here we are. This is where we are. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Kliff Kingsbury fired his head coach. Steve Keim will not be returning as GM. I'm sure he'll take a legacy role somewhere. Director of such and such. As long as he's not in the draft room on draft day, I'm good. Make him king of mascots. Who cares? Give him a gig, pay him millions of dollars, whatever. Just keep him out of the GM chair. I'm going to talk more about this season as we wrap. I'm going to talk more about Kliff. I'll give some positives about Kliff. I will give some positives about Vance Joseph because Vance Joseph, he's getting a look. He's getting a look for head coach. Should he be? I'll talk about it. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Tommy John. Okay. Tommy John, they've been with us for a little while. And listen, winter mornings are brutal. Okay. So here's my tip for tackling the day in comfort. Grab new Tommy John Loungewear and take cozy wherever you go. Wherever you start, whether you start the year in Tommy John, you get much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. That's kind of what they're aiming for. With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews, people love Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. Okay? Like this Tommy John fanatic who raves, I bought one pair of loungewear, and after wearing them for 2 days, got all the colors available. The only place I don't want to wear them is in the shower because that would get messy. Plus, it's all backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Get 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. 20% off right now at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See site for details. And another, sponsor of ours. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is, it's something that therapy is important. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, whether you're dealing with issues that you haven't got all the way through, or you're trying to, remain status quo for, where you're at, therapy is important. I mean, unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. And therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. And BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online. Everyone deserves to feel their best. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. Learn more and save 10% on your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Kliff Kingsbury out. Steve Keim out of the GM role, at least. This is not something, celebrate's the wrong word, okay? Because you don't ever want to celebrate somebody getting fired, even if they deserve it. This is, again, not something that is direct, attack at the people personally. It's at the avatar of the GM and head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, neither of whom deserve to have their jobs after what we've seen over the last handful of years. I think it's pretty obvious. A couple positives we saw from Kliff this year. A couple things that we saw change, which was way too late. But his usage of Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch. I don't know what took so long. I don't know why it took all of last year to figure out how to use Rondale Moore. I don't know. And you could say that the offensive skill position group was more stacked this year than it was last year. Now, DeAndre Hopkins out for the first 6 weeks, Hollywood Brown out for 6 weeks after that or so. But his usage of Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch have shown the next head coach and the next OC how these guys can be utilized. Because if you've been watching since camp, Greg Dortch was the biggest name in camp, him and Antonio Hamilton. And if Antonio Hamilton didn't have that, terrible cooking accident with the hot oil, he would have started week 1 at CB. And, the fact that Greg Dortch didn't get the run necessary until other players got injured, that's a shortcoming. But the usage of Greg Dortch, when they did use him, and Rondale Moore, I'll couple in both of them, it shows for the future that this wide receiver core is going to be okay. It's going to be good because we're going to have uncomfortable conversations about DeAndre Hopkins. We're going to have uncomfortable conversations about Hollywood Brown, even though that will be more short-lived in my humblest of opinions because he's going to get a contract extension. And I do implore people, before I talk about VJ here in a second, I do implore people to be patient. Well, Alex, you haven't been patient. You wanted Kliff Kingsbury gone for 2 years. Yeah, I waited 2 years before I really started ringing that bell. So I would say about 750 days or so is patient. Whoever the next GM and head coach is, are going to have to undo a lot of things. They're going to have to undo a lot because whoever the next GM is, whether it be Adrian Wilson, which I think is not the right decision. The Cardinals need to hire way outside of the organization. Way outside. Way. Even though Adrian Wilson, it sucks for him because he'd probably be a good fill-in or a good replacement for Steve Keim. Got to go outside. Michael Bidwill, this is going to be perpetual motion of I'm just going to hire guys I know because I don't want to try anything wrong, and this is just what it's going to be. Can't do it. Can't do it. And I'll talk about who I think the next GM and head coach should be for the Arizona Cardinals. It's going to take a little while to undo. This draft should streamline things a little bit because they have so many picks. They have so many picks. And it's going to be able to fill a lot of holes that the Cardinals have, the vast majority of holes the Cardinals have on offense and defense. So keep in mind, center, guard, left guard, right guard, probably a right tackle, interior defensive line, pass rush, corner. All of them. So it may take 2 off seasons for the Cardinals to get where they want to be, roster-wise. They're going to have to undo a lot of the idiocy that Steve Keim has put them through. Like, I got a ration of excrement on draft day when I saw they traded for Hollywood Brown. I thought that was a terrible move. Awful move. You had Tyler Linderbaum right there from Iowa, all-world center. You play him at guard until Rodney Hudson retires. And, oh, look, Rodney Hudson was out for 12 games, 13 games this year. Could have put him in. Plug and play next 15 years. Center. Done. Set and forget. Didn't do it. Second round. Oh, could have drafted Drake Jackson. Could have drafted a couple other edge rushers in the middle of the second round. Could have traded up and drafted David Ojabo from Michigan, who only fell because he got injured during the combine. Nope. Let's draft a tight end. So I understand everybody got excited. Oh, you know what? You're being so negative. Best tight end of the draft. Hollywood Brown, he and Kyler Murray are best friends. Can a wide receiver block for a quarterback? Can they? Like in the trenches? No. And Trey McBride was used like Max Williams for a lot of the year. It's like, well, why are you using a second-round pick on a guy when you have so many other glaring needs elsewhere? So when I say that they need to undo a lot of things, that's just one of them. So it's going to be a process. So whoever comes in as head coach and GM, it's not going to be like, oh, one and done, see ya. Cardinals are a project. They're a project that's going to take a couple years to get back into like relevancy full forced. And what you want to do is not build for now. It's not put Band-Aids on the cracks in the foundation now like Steve Keim has tried to do by trading for veterans. It's through the draft. Sustained draft success is the biggest thing the Arizona Cardinals need for the next decade. Because all you need are 2 or 3 above average drafts in a row to completely change the landscape of your organization. Or landscape. And that's something the Cardinals have desperately needed since 2013. And this is coming to a head here. This is it. And the Cardinals severely lack. And these are things that are going to change. This is not like what I just said. This will happen immediately, and you'll feel it. Leadership. Stable leadership. Enforcing leadership. Not just, yeah, man, got to watch tape. Got to watch film. Oh, yeah. Got to do better with that. Kliff Kingsbury is not a leader. And that's going to be felt the most, the soonest, with whoever Michael Bidwill hires. And I'll talk about who I think the GM and head coach should be in 2023 for moving forward for the Cardinals. And is Vance Joseph the name that I'm going to say? I'll talk about it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. I'm really geeked out about our new partner. Sponsor of today's episode as well. Ultimate Football GM. Ever dream of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, you're definitely in the mood for some fun here. You manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency, etc. Like, this is a full force. You are the GM of an organization. And all of this is in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable online and offline. You play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Cardinals listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On, all caps. So you make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Kliff Kingsbury removed from his post. Steve Keim removed from his post as GM. Arizona Cardinals 2.0 has begun. Again, I will not be taking a victory lap. I was surprised. I was surprised that Kliff Kingsbury got fired today. Like, it was one of those. You have like a 99% chance of something happening, but one of my favorite things to say is percentages don't matter when it's you. Percentages don't matter. Oh, you have an 85% chance of getting this. I don't care. Is it 100%? So percentages didn't matter when it was us waiting for the news to come down from Shefty, Rapp, and et cetera, that Kliff Kingsbury was fired. Because we hadn't, like, Michael Bidwill is going to really need to try some wrong. He's going to need to do everything the opposite of how he's always done everything. And it takes a lot of something to be able to do that. Self-awareness, existential crisis management. Michael Bidwill has a choose-your-own-adventure key for the future of his organization. He's rid himself of Steve Keim. He's rid himself of Kliff Kingsbury. And now he's able to make the right decisions that will not only impact his wallet, but what you'd think more importantly is the team itself and the fan base. I mean, I've had countless people reach out to me, DM and just comments on Twitter, etc., about how if Kliff Kingsbury comes back, I'm done as a fan. If this, I'm done as a fan. 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 And now he has the chance to do what's right. And what's right is there's a spectrum there. Okay? I'm not saying to do what's right like, hey, Mikey B, give me a call. I got the right answers. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is vet properly. Don't just hire somebody you know. So when people say, and Albert Breer put out a great article about the Cardinals, and he's heard from sources that Vance Joseph may not be just a leading candidate, but the leading candidate to be head coach. And that Adrian Wilson could be the guy at GM. This is perpetual motion of running on a hamster wheel. Vance Joseph has been good. He's been fine. I think Vance Joseph has been the unsung coach hero over the last 4 years because he's kept this baby afloat when Kliff Kingsbury didn't know what the hell he was doing, in my humblest of opinions. The defense was not built to lead this team. The defense was not built to be the strength of this team. The defense was not drafted for properly to be able to withstand the rigors of all the high-powered offenses the Cardinals have played over the last 3 or 4 years. It wasn't. He wasn't set up to succeed, and that wasn't Kliff Kingsbury's fault with the personnel. Steve Keim's fault. Now, is Vance Joseph absolved of everything? Absolutely not. But I don't think Vance Joseph is the right choice. If you want to keep Vance Joseph on as DC, absolutely. I'm assuming he's going to get looks elsewhere. He may get head coaching job looks elsewhere, even though, unfortunately, the offense cratered this year and the defense was a shell of what it should have been because it was completely ignored all offseason. And the Cardinals probably give the most points in the NFL, but that's not the whole story. That's not the whole story. I do not think Vance Joseph and Adrian Wilson should be the next head coach and GM of the Arizona Cardinals. I think, and I will continue to think, that it should be DeMeco Ryans, defensive coordinator of those San Francisco 49ers, and Louis Riddick, now of ESPN, has spent a lot of time playing and in the front offices of NFL, namely in scouting, to be the next head coach and GM of the Arizona Cardinals for so many reasons. But I've only got four minutes left before Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints, shout out, gets mad at me. Leadership, stability, fear. The most fearsome entity in the NFL this year. All offenses and defenses across the NFL, in my opinion, the San Francisco 49ers defense. What they're able to do with the quarterback carousel that's been going on, injuries, etc. They are the MVP of the San Francisco 49ers. Not taken away from Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's been obviously way better than anybody expected, and he's now leveling up to the point he's putting up massive numbers. Massive numbers. But the defense of the 49ers is the heartbeat. And I'm finding, and this is just me percolating over the last couple of years, defensive supremacy is going to be more important every day from now for the next 10 years than it has been for the last 10. And if you can bring in a leader like DeMeco Ryans, who not only is the head of the best defense in the NFL, but also played defense against these offenses. He was playing with the Texans until 2015. He's played recently. He knows this game, this part of the NFL. He knows it. And with the bevy of draft picks the Cardinals have, this team could turn around defensively in an offseason. And you know what DeMeco Ryans is going to bring? Free agents. You know what DeMeco Ryans is going to bring? Immediate leveling up from the head coach position. Immediate. Well, he hasn't coached before. Oh, this is like Steve Wilkes. Oh, this is like, it ain't any of that. That's a lazy thought. Just because somebody hasn't been a head coach before doesn't mean he won't be a great head coach. Book that. And Louis Riddick is one of the smartest minds in football I've ever witnessed. Well, it's easy because he's in the booth. Sure, and he's got sources around the NFL still. He talks about the NFL every day. It's not like he's talking about, underwater basket weaving now and wants to jump back into the football route. This dude is one of the smartest minds in football, and one of the biggest issues the Cardinals have had since 2013 has been scouting. He got his chops in that to start. He played in the NFL. He's a home run fit. And the best part, he's not an Arizona Cardinal. Michael Bidwill probably doesn't have his number. And that's the best possible thing. Because you know what? And I'm sorry, but it's true. The Arizona Cardinals are run like they've won 10 Super Bowls, and they're one of the losingest franchise in the history of sports. And if Michael Bidwill wants to change, if Michael Bidwill wants to win, he will try the opposite of everything he's done up till this point. The complete opposite. And DeMeco Ryans and Louis Riddick would be a fantastic first step into what is the Arizona Cardinals 2.0. Because if he does hire Vance Joseph, and listen, Vance Joseph has done a great job with what he's done a great job. Okay? I don't think he should get the promotion. I don't. And Adrian Wilson, same thing, done a great job. If the Cardinals stay in-house, This is just a different episode of the same TV show. Bidwill's bloopers. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.